There's one word you keep using that's quietly destroying every conversation you're in. You don't even notice it anymore. It slips out automatically, feels polite, maybe even necessary. But the person listening, their brain just registered you as unsafe, untrustworthy, someone to keep at arm's length. The word is fine, and it's costing you more than you realize. Think about the last time someone asked how you were doing. What did you say? Fine. How was your day? Fine. Everything okay? Yeah, I'm fine. It's the default answer we reach for when we don't want to explain, when the truth feels too heavy, when we're just trying to get through the interaction without making it complicated. But here's what researchers at UCLA discovered. When someone repeatedly says they're fine, especially when their body language or tone suggests otherwise, the listener's brain activates the same regions associated with detecting deception. You're not lying. But your brain is sending mixed signals, and the other person's nervous system picks up on that conflict instantly. Psychologist Dr. Paul Ekman spent decades studying microexpressions, those involuntary facial movements that last less than a second. He found that when someone says fine but feels anything but, their face betrays them. A slight tension in the jaw, a flicker around the eyes. The listener might not consciously notice these signals, but they're subconscious absolutely does, and once that mismatch registers, trust begins to erode. Not dramatically, not all at once, just a quiet withdrawal, a mental note that says this person doesn't tell me the truth. Now, some of you are thinking, but I am fine. I don't need to dump my problems on everyone, and you're right. You're not obligated to bare your soul to the cashier at the grocery store, but there's a difference between privacy and deflection. Privacy is intentional. Deflection is protective. And your nervous system knows which one you're doing. When you say fine as a shield, as a way to end the conversation before it starts, you're activating what psychologists call the dismissive response. You're signaling to the other person that their question wasn't worth a real answer, that you don't trust them enough to be even mildly honest. And here's the part that stings. They feel it. Maybe not consciously, but somewhere in their gut, they register that you just closed a door. Stanford researcher Dr. Jamil Zaki studies trust and connection. His work shows that people don't need you to overshare. They need you to be congruent. That means your words, tone, and body language all pointing in the same direction. When those elements align, even a simple answer builds trust. When they don't, even the most polite response creates distance. Fine is almost never congruent. It's a placeholder, a verbal shrug, and it teaches people that asking you real questions leads nowhere. But let's go deeper. Where did fine even come from? For many people, it started young. Maybe you grew up in a house where emotions were inconvenient, where being upset meant being a burden, where the safest answer to any question was the one that required no follow-up. So you learned to compress everything into 4 letters. Anger, sadness, exhaustion, loneliness, all of it gets labeled fine, because fine doesn't ask anything of anyone. It's the emotional equivalent of closing a door quietly so no one hears the click. Psychiatrist Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote The Body Keeps the Score, explains that when we habitually disconnect from our internal experience, we're not just hiding from others, we're hiding from ourselves. And over time, that disconnect becomes automatic. You stop checking in with how you actually feel because the answer doesn't matter. Fine is easier. Fine is faster. Fine keeps everyone comfortable, except it doesn't. Because the people around you aren't comfortable. They're confused. They're trying to connect with someone who keeps handing them a wall. So what happens when you build a life on fine, when every interaction ends before it begins? You end up isolated. Not because you chose solitude, but because you trained everyone to stop asking. Your relationships become surface level, pleasant, polite, and ultimately hollow. Because no one knows you. Not really. They know the version of you that says fine, the version that nods and smiles and never needs anything. And that version, it's exhausting to maintain. Because underneath, you're carrying everything alone. Psychologist Dr. Kristen Neff's research on self-compassion reveals something crucial. When we chronically disconnect from our emotions, we don't just lose connection with others, we lose access to our own needs. You can't advocate for yourself if you don't know what you're feeling. You can't set boundaries if you can't identify when something crosses them. Fine becomes a prison you built one polite response at a time. There's another cost nobody mentions. When you refuse to be real with people, you also block them from being real with you. Dr. Arthur Aron's famous study on intimacy showed that mutual vulnerability creates closeness. Not one-sided confessions, mutual. When you shut down with fine, you're not just protecting yourself, you're telling the other person that honesty isn't safe here, that this relationship has a ceiling. And people feel that ceiling even if they can't name it. So they stop trying. They stop asking how you are because they've learned your answer doesn't mean anything. And then one day, you wonder why no one checks on you anymore. Why your phone stays quiet, why people seem close to each other but distant from you. The answer is simple. You taught them that you didn't want to be known. Let's be clear. You don't owe anyone your pain. You don't have to perform emotional availability for people who haven't earned it. But there's a middle ground between oversharing and shutting down completely. You can say, honestly, today's been rough, without listing every detail. You can say, I'm working through something, without turning it into a therapy session. You can be truthful without being raw. What changes when you do that? Everything. When you replace fine with something real, even something small, you give the other person permission to do the same. You signal that this space can hold honesty, that you're not just exchanging pleasantries, you're actually connecting. And connection, real connection, is what your nervous system has been starving for all along. Neuroscientist Dr. Matthew Lieberman found that social pain activates the same brain regions as physical pain. When you say fine and push people away, your brain registers it as a threat to survival. Because humans are wired for connection, not performance, not politeness, connection, and fine is the opposite of that. If you spent years defaulting to fine, changing that pattern won't feel natural at first. It'll feel vulnerable, risky, like you're handing someone a weapon. But here's what actually happens. Most people don't weaponize honesty. They respect it, they lean in, they mirror it back, and suddenly the conversation you've been avoiding for years becomes the one that actually matters. You don't have to announce your feelings to everyone. You don't have to become an open book. But you do have to stop pretending that fine is a sustainable way to live. Because it's not. It's a slow erosion of intimacy, trust, and ultimately, yourself. So the next time someone asks how you are, pause. Check in with yourself. And if the answer isn't actually fine, don't say it. Say something true, something small, something human. Because the people worth keeping in your life aren't looking for perfect. They're looking for real, and real is the only thing that ever connected anyone to anyone else. You've been using fine as protection. But protection from what? From being seen? From being known? From the possibility that someone might actually care? The irony is that the very word you use to keep yourself safe is the one making you unreachable. And unreachable people don't get hurt less, they just hurt alone. Stop saying fine when you're not. Start small, start honest, and watch what happens when you finally let someone in.